What is good, all you cool cats and kittens? This is your Commissioner Tim back at you for a Week 7 recap and Week 8 power rankings as another week is in the books and we are officially in the mid-season. 7 games down, 7 more to go in the regular season. The power rankings are now geared towards what I believe to be the full strength ability of each team's output for their contention ability. Bye weeks and short-term injuries disregarded for the top 5 teams who are locked in for the playoffs, in my opinion. The 6th seed and beyond will still be on the likelihood to make the playoffs given the tight race. All right, I'm recording from Korea. Just got back from my anniversary trip in Thailand. So it's a little dark, but I wanted to make sure I get this video out to y'all. Who says this commissioner isn't the hardest working commissioner? It's all of fantasy. So let's kick it off with our video. First segment being the Nostradamus reviews of all your picks. There weren't any upsets this week, but let's start with matchup number 1. We got 2 shots, no cup against Mr. Ambassador. Everyone got this right. Actually, I had this reversed. I forget who picked 2, but anyways, there was only one that was wrong here. And then moving over to matchup number 2, we got Full Jerry against Kevin. Full Jerry racking up 3 straight wins. What a position to be in. I believe it was the week 5 video where Jerry was sitting at 1 and 3. And we were talking about him needing to make sure that he gets at least one of week 5, week 6, and then certainly he needs to win week 7. He's won all 3, and rightfully so. Places him at a comfortable 4 and 3. Now, definitely a shoe-in for the playoffs. Obviously, not a great week in terms of the outputs, but great nonetheless. Happy for you, Johnny. Things are coming, swinging back around for you. Everyone but Kevin. I love that Kevin continues to bet on himself, but got 8 out of 9 right for the ones who participated this week. All right, moving over to matchup number 3, Moncton Meerkats against Brad. Whoopsie finger hold. The Moncton Meerkats ran off with the league week high of 168. It's a great week. Lamar continues to go off. His quarterback play continues to be strong. We'll talk more about his team in the power rankings, but this was a unanimous pick'em at 9 out of 9 managers. Now, Moncton Meerkats stays tied at 5 and 2, which means he's tied at 2nd. And Brad moves down a column to a losing record of 3 and 4 for the season. Matchup number 4, we got Bills Mafia against Huge Dicka. Travis continues to really run into tough opponents. This was another week where he had a decent output, just got beat by a better team. And as a result, 5 straight losses for him, now sitting at 9th at 1 and 6. Travis, as you see by the Nostradamus picks, I've really rooted for you here. Unfortunately, Bills Mafia, obviously a strong team, which you'll see his power rankings reflected. What a great week seeing Jahmyr Gibbs going off, even though the weird fluky week of Bijan's flu week, affected his plays there, but still really outputs a strong 143. Great to see Pat Mahomes and Jalen Hurts really having strong weeks for the first time this season. All right, so Bills Mafia sits at 5 and 2, tied at 2nd. Comes back from a loss that he endured last week. Moving over to matchup number 5, this was the commissioner pick of the week against Trust the Process and Brady Stir Dynasty. So there was the number 1 team and the number 3 team heading into week 7. Trust the Process continues to run the gauntlet and now at a perfect 7 and 0 to start the season. Brady Stir Dynasty moves down a column to 4 and 3. That's 2nd loss in a row for him, and also a really disappointing output in terms of scores. But 6 of you got this pick right. And that does it for the Nostradamus picks. So I'm going to go into the power rankings now. And we are officially, like I said, in the mid-season. Oh, and here's the tally for the current leaderboard. after their perfect week, Kyle and Eve, congrats on your perfect 5 for 5. We didn't have a perfect pick last week, but after their perfect picks of week 7, now there's a 3-way tie at 28 between Eve, Kyle, and myself. And John is just 1 game behind at 27. All right, let's move over to the season power rankings. We are officially in the mid-season. Like I said at the top of this video, all of this is now going to be based on what I think is the content ability of the top 5 teams who are locked in for the playoffs. And then we got still based on what I think is the playoff odds to make the 6th seed, as that's all bunched up right now, still in the race for 4 teams. All right, so I'm going to continue the same thing, fill in 1 team at a time and then put in the rest. I'm going to start off with Brandon. I'm actually moving up to number 3. I saw 2 needle moving things in week 7 on his roster, his 2 quarterbacks and Jahmyr Gibbs play. Week 7 was the first time Mahomes and Hurts have combined for 50-plus points this season. Now, that seems high, but obviously those 2 are extremely talented. That figure, by the way, last season, they did that on 56% of games, 9 of the first 16 weeks in the season. So forget about all the injuries Brandon has had to date. Obviously, he's had incredibly unfortunate luck with the long-term injuries he sustained in the early part of the season. But the underplay of Mahomes and Jalen Hurts to date, the fact that this is the first time in 7 weeks that they've crossed 50-plus together, something that they did majority of their games last season. This is the chief reason for his underperformance in terms of his scoring output for the season so far. Obviously, I think he should be very fortunate to be sitting at 5-2. But if Mahomes and Jalen Hurts is able to continue to do this more often like 2022 for the rest of 2023 season, it won't matter if players like Bijan are out on their flu weeks like we saw in week 7. And my bet is that Jalen Hurts and Pat Mahomes will do this more often than 1 out of every 7 weeks, like they've shown in the first half of the season. But for Brandon to be in the contender tier for me, it will have to be on having at least one of Eckler or Jahmyr Gibbs, who finish out as a top 5 running back in terms of actual output rest of the season. Both players are capable of doing so, and we did see what Jahmyr Gibbs can do when he's fed the rock. And you could ask, running backs, rookie running backs continue to get bigger load in terms of their output and touches and carries and opportunities as the season progresses. Is this one of those things that the genie's out of the bottle now finally? Or is this one of those things that Dan Campbell just really wants to use a running back like a Jahmyr Gibbs, but never really figures it out in the case that he had with DeAndre Swift? But it's going to be a wait and see until we see either Eckler or Gibbs or both really, really producing. But I believe Mahomes and Hurts are going to be producing at the levels that they did last season. And I think the first half of the season is just a fluky underperformance to start. But it will require Eckler or Gibbs to get into top 5 running back for me. But still moving Brandon up to number 3 because of the positive things that we saw in the quarterback play. All right, moving over to number 9. Got Travis sitting at 1-6 now. By the way, you'll see the playoff odds here. I'm going to leave empty for the 4 teams that are in contention for the 6, because I'll show you something really, really interesting. But Travis is sitting at 1-6 now. Okay, so I've been chatting all last week about not seeing a path for Travis to make the playoffs. And when I started writing this outline and doing analysis, I just thought that was going to be the case. Because heading into week 7, I thought he needed to win in order for him to continue to live and be on the edge with his chances to get in and not necessarily close the door. But after looking through the next few weeks worth of schedules for all teams that are currently in contention for the 6th seed, there's actually a legit path for Travis. So on the surface, it looks next to impossible as he's sitting a full 2 games back behind 3 teams. That's Sergey, Kevin, and Brad, all now at 3-4, but all 3 of those teams are heavy underdogs over the next 2 weeks, while Travis starts his easiest stretch of schedule of the season going after Kevin, going against Kevin this week and then Eve next week. So there's a great chance that we may have a 4-way tie at 6th with 4 teams that are having 3 wins at 3-6 after week 9, Travis being one of those teams. And in week 10, we restart the schedule series to week 1, where Travis has a chance to split the regular season with full Jerry, as John will have quite a few buys with Travis having a full roster. So there's legitimately a chance. And again, I'm going to leave the playoff odds here a little bit blank because it's different than how I calculate it. But there's a source that I want to share with you in terms of what they think is the playoff odds of these middle teams. And continue speaking about Travis, by week 12, if Travis is in contention for the 6th seed, the number of competitors will likely just be down to 1 or no other competitors because of the records and what that reflects for the other teams. And also, trading out of contention, at which point he can choose to make appropriate trade deadline moves to affect his chances to make the playoffs even more. If he loses even 1 in the next 2 weeks, however, I think his chances are actually going down to 0. So come on, Travis. In a season where no one that's in contention for the 6th seed actually seems to want to take the playoff seed, we're rooting for you, Travis. I've got Travis sitting at 9th, just given his record difference to the other teams. But in 2 weeks, he could be sitting at 6th pretty comfortably by winning out in his easiest schedule stretch to date. All right. I've got John looking at you sitting at 4-3 now, officially with the winning record, now having rattled off 3 straight victories. I've been saying it even when John was sitting at 1-3. I think this team is good enough to contend for a bye week. I mean, top 2 finish. He's legitimately in that conversation now because he only sits 1 game back to Brandon and Kyle, who are tied at 2nd for the final playoff bye week seeding. But I've got John staying put at number 4, but certainly within that same tier. And by the way, that just means that I've got Ryan dropping to number 5, not necessarily because his team lost this week, or not necessarily because I think there's a tier gap per se, but I really do think Ryan is going to have a hard time competing against the top 4 teams on this list when he has to figure out how to make up the difference at the quarterback positions. So let me give you some stats regarding that delta of the positional difference that Ryan has at the quarterbacks against the top 4 teams. All of the top 4 teams likely will put up 40 plus at the quarterback 1 and quarterback 2 most of those weeks. All of a figure, by the way, that Ryan has only cleared once this entire season. Ryan averages just 28.33 points at his quarterback positions, which is 6.5 points worse than John and Kyle, who are currently tied at 3rd, 11.6 points worse than Tim, and 13.8 points worse than Brandon, who sits at the top. Having a high-performing Travis Kelce at the tight end will go a long ways to making up this gap week to week because everyone else has to catch up to him at the tight end position. But it's just really, really challenging to have the playoff catch up to every single week at 2 positions, which is the QB1 and QB2. By the way, I still got the chances of all 5 teams making the playoffs, and they're all realistic probability to have a shot at winning it all in terms of the ranges of they're actually winning the playoffs. So all of this commentary is just nitpicking, trying to figure out the numerical rankings, but that's the large reason why I've got Bradyster Dynasty moving down to 5 here. And then that means that I've got Kyle continue maintaining his spot at number 2. This seems good. And if Lamar can put up more 30-plus point weeks like he did starting last season, we know Kyle is going to be favored to beat every team in the league given his strength of stud running backs. And as I mentioned in the video a couple weeks back, Kyle's quarterback consistency has been the issue this season. They're either going to score more than 42 points in the weeks he wins, like week 7, or less than 12 in the weeks that he loses. Once Lamar turns on the Jets and is able to put up 30 plus consistently, Kyle should be able to consistently expect some output from his quarterback positions from Lamar's production alone. Okay, so Kyle now, he faces Trust the Process this coming week to defend his 8-0 record in CCK to start the season that he set last season. Just a public service announcement, Kyle. If you don't beat me this week, there's a great chance that I will go at least 11-0 to start, as I will start my easiest slate of schedule starting week 9. That will be one hell of a record that likely will stay for a long time. So do for Canada, Kyle. All right, so that means that I've got myself sitting at the number one position for another week. Certainly hard to argue that. Certainly hard to argue that I'm not at my full strength at this point in the season, just to Justin Fields and Kyler Murray being out. But Kyler Murray is rumored to be starting in the next couple of weeks, maybe by as early as week 9. And it's been great to see Breece Hall and Jonathan Taylor really, really starting to ramp up. While I'm not counting on a perfect record this season, and to be frank, I think that's just unnecessary pressure. I don't want to necessarily chase. That said, as I know, I have a matchup from hell in week 13 against Brandon when I have bye weeks to both Justin Fields and Josh Allen. So I know it's going to be impossible for me to probably get that perfect record, but I think it will be really special to beat Kyle and potentially set me up to go at least 11-0. So regular season is fun, but come playoffs, anything can happen. So I'm not letting my guard down or my hopes up. That's it for the top 5 teams. And then now let's move over to the 4 teams who still continue to contend for the playoff spot. Number 6, I got Wooksy staying at 6 as this. I got Sergey jumping up a spot with a win now. I think his team is stronger than Kevin's, given current injuries to Kevin's team. And now that both of these teams have the same record, I've got Mr. Ambassador jumping up to 7, meaning that Kevin has dropped a spot. And that means that Eve is sitting at 10. I don't see Eve moving out of that spot. He's paid for long-term parking for that 10 spot for the rest of the season. By the way, so I was talking about the playoff odds that I didn't necessarily share with my calculus that I've been doing today because I saw something that I thought was really, really interesting. So instead of showing my own numbers for the playoff probability for the 6th seed, take a look at what Fantasy Pros currently has it at after 7 weeks. I was really, really surprised to see Travis being the second most likely to make the playoffs behind Wooksy, even though he's a full 2 games behind. I don't have Travis quite this high in my math, but Fantasy Pros is definitely looking ahead at the regression to the mean for several teams, along with the scheduling of ease for Travis that's about to come up. So Travis, stay in there, hang in there. The skin of your teeth are hanging in. This is going to be a really, really fun second half of the season. Remember, we've got the NFL trade deadlines, I believe, happening later this month. And we've got our own trade deadlines happening at the conclusion, I believe, of week 12 games. So it's all done at the end of Monday Night Football on week 12. That's when trade deadline is, I believe. But check it out for yourself on Sleeper Settings. So that does it for the power rankings heading into week 8. Make your Nostradamus picks. Link is pinned in the Sleeper chat. I got 2 matchups to really, really keep an eye out on. Number 1 is Huge Dicka versus Kevin Yip. If Travis loses either of his matchups this week or next in week 9, he's out of the playoffs, barring some crazy tanking job by the current 3 and 4 teams to finish out the season. And then the commissioner matchup of the week is the script writing that could not happen more perfect in Kyle's defense of his sole best start record to a season at an incredible 8-0 against Trust the Process. This defense, like I said, will likely either allow Kyle to hold on to that record for another season, or he's going to give it up, as Trust the Process will likely go at least 11-0 otherwise, given his upcoming schedule. All right, boys, good luck in week 8, gentlemen. Enjoy Thursday night football, and see ya.